was fun because you can't look sad about it. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of From the Fourth Line. My name's and I'm joined, as always, by my lovely co-host, Ella.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Leafs had Buffalo for the last game of their homestand before they head off on their West Coast road trip. West Coast Canadian road trip, I should add. And I guess we'll talk about the game in a little bit of a way of the fact of, like, when the first period ends and the score is 3-2, you know it's going to be one of those games.
Yeah, and one of those games it was.
One of those games it was. The Leafs would go on to win, to not win. God, no. To lose.
That's asking a lot.
To lose 7-4. But pregame, the Leafs did honor the 50th anniversary of Daryl Sittler's 10-point night, in which he set the NHL record 50 years ago, in 1976. He set the record for the most points in a single NHL game, with 10. And I will say, like, his record in that game specifically is always funny because it falls into that category of, like, records I would have thought were owned by Wayne Gretzky, but aren't.
Yeah.
Because, like, you go digging and you think, like, oh yeah, no, most points in a single game would belong to Wayne Gretzky. No, it's Daryl Sittler. Which, you know, is pretty cool. It's also, like, you think it's not that big of a deal, but then also, like, in this game specifically, Rasmus Dahlin had five points, 3 of them being goals. And, like, he still was all over the puck, and it seemed like, okay, but, like, how could you have fit
twice?
Yeah, like, how could you do that again through a number of 60 minutes? Like, that's just how impressive the feat is that Sittler accomplished. You know, obviously the era of the game is a lot different now than it is back then, and all those sorts of things. But it was a lovely pregame ceremony. They brought all of his alive teammates from that game. I had to specify alive. It's not like they're gonna wheel out the corpse of Boreas Salming.
Oh no.
Out there. And then, like, you know, they made, like, Lanny McDonald, Daryl Sittler, BFFs, like, canon in the for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They literally said Daryl Sittler's best friends, Lanny McDonald and Tiger Williams. Okay? Which I found deeply entertaining. I thought that was, like, really sweet. I was like, oh, old people can have best friends too.
Gonna be like us one day.
But it was a really lovely ceremony. It was really funny. I was watching the game with my parents. So my dad, like, as they were introducing each guy, he was just, like, you know, saying the number, like the jersey number that they wore. And I was like, oh, that's where I get it from.
It makes a lot of sense.
Catch me in 50 years going, Steven Lorentz, man, number 18. What a guy.
I remember
Connor Dewar.
Those were the days. Justin Hall, number 3.
Those were the times, man.
Remember
they don't play hockey the same. Because who knows, 50 years from now.
The same anymore.
Right? Like, oh man. But it was great. You know, obviously the Leafs did not play very well, so it was a nice little bright spot at the start of the game. You know, and I'm not going to go break down through, like, goal by goal of this. I think, you know, we can touch on some general things as well, is, like, I think, you know, going through this homestand that they had where they played 5 games, went 0-4-1, I think it is time that we now have, like, an honest discussion about the status of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Because, like, we've been trying to give them a little bit of a runway and some leeway, and we were like, hey, look, like, there's still time for this team to turn things around. They need to go like Buffalo, like what Buffalo had, where they won 5th, how many games in a row? Like, they were 10, 11 games in a row, I believe, probably more than that, honestly. Or like Tampa had like a 15-game win streak that kind of went under the radar, at least in like the Toronto media. Is like the fact of like, hey, have you looked at the standings? Because like here's Tampa on a 15-game win streak. But like the Leafs are running out of time to do this. I saw a tweet, I can't remember from what I think it was Chris Johnson, tweeted this out, that was about how the Leafs need to go 29-0-0 in their remaining 29 games to reach 115 points on the season, which is the same number of points that they had in the 2021-22 season. To put that into perspective, like that's what they need to do to close out this. They need to not lose for the end of the season to finish with the same number of points that they had in the 21-22 season. So like obviously I think at this point in time, with the way that the trade deadline will be here way faster than I think people expect, because you look at it and you're like, we're not even really in February yet. Like we still got time. There's a roster freeze from February 4th to the 22nd due to the Olympics. So you kind of only have 6 days left before that roster freeze goes into effect. And then from the end of that roster freeze to the trade deadline, which I believe is March 6th. I'm like just pulling up my calendar now. Hold on. Which is March 6th is the Friday. From the 22nd, you have like just under 2 weeks. If you look at it, you really don't have a lot of time left if you want to make a trade. That doesn't mean that during like February 4th to the 22nd, like GMs aren't allowed to call each other. But like there's going to be a lot of GMs that are going to be going overseas to the Olympics who are probably not necessarily going to have their entire, like if you want to make a trade with like Pittsburgh or St. Louis, or I'm trying to think of like other GMs who are going over, but like Tampa, because I think Breezeball is going over. Like what I'm saying is if you want to make, I think Don Sweeney, no, Bill Guerin, so Minnesota, who would be buyers at the deadline. Like if you wanted to make those trades, like you don't necessarily have as much opportunity as it might look when you're like, oh, deadline's March 6th. We're only still in January. We got loads of time, but you really don't. It's going to be really quick. And I think it's now time for not just the Toronto Maple Leafs, but also not just, I guess, Leaf fans. I think Leaf fans have kind of come to that resignation that this team should be selling at the deadline to try and recuperate assets, turn this team into a corner where you're making it younger, you're making it faster. But I think also the front office has to come to that of like, hey, look, you're not going to make the playoffs this year. If you do, it's going to be a goddamn miracle. And then you're not going to then you're not going to make it out of the first round. Like this is not a Stanley Cup contending team. This isn't a roster in which you're like, man, like we're so close. This could be the roster. Because it's not. And it's not performing that way. And yes, you've missed a lot. You've had a lot of games that you've lost due to injury. You're out Tanev for the rest of the year. You've lost Carlo to games that he was playing hurt and then also games of injury. You've lost Nylander to quite a few games now. Nyes is playing hurt right now, and you can tell. You've goaltenders. Sorry, I saw something that was like, I watched Anthony Stolarz' media availability from the other day, and someone asked a question about like, you've only had about 3 games with you and Joseph Woll on the roster together. What has it been like to have him back on the bench, or like to be back on the bench with him when he's starting, and like vice versa? Like, what is it like to now be back in a game together? And I'm like, we've only had 3 games. Like that, I saw that and I was like, oh my God, like to show you how much, not to have anything against Dennis Hildeby, he played great, and I'm frustrated that the Leafs didn't trust him enough to go a full 50-50 split with him and Woll, because I think you could have run that, and that's where Woll performs best. And also I think it's when you got your best games out of Dennis Hildeby is when you played him quite often as well. But, like, it's the fact that, oh my God, this tandem that the Leafs relied on so heavily last year. Now, did they have that tandem the full season? No, due to injury. But, like, when they were healthy and you had that tandem going, you relied on that goaltending quite a bit to get you out of games. And it's like, you've only had them for, like, 3 games now at this point, where
Which
they've
is
both been
crazy.
healthy and both been on the roster. Now, not to say that some of it, obviously Joseph Wool took a leave of absence due to personal reasons, which, like, fair right for him to do.
Mm.
Why he did is none of our business. I'm not, being like, oh, this is the reason the Leafs season failed. No, because the Leafs made other bad mistakes
Yeah.
to compensate for losing Wool. Where really they should have just trusted what they know, which was Dennis Hildeby, and had him from
Mm.
the get-go instead of, having Caden Primo and, like, claiming him off waivers, playing him where the dude can't even stop a goddamn beach ball in the NHL. I haven't looked at his stats in the AHL recently at all, but, like, in the NHL, his stats are god awful, but can't even stop a beach ball. And then sign James Reimer to a PTO. You play him for not even a full game, a half game. He allows 4 goals, and then you, like, scratch, like, then you ditch him. So, like,
Mm.
and then finally you're like, hey, I guess it's time for us to trust Dennis Hildeby. And then you realize, oh, we've got an NHL caliber goalie here. Yes, he's a little rough around the edges. Yes, he's probably not going to be your starter right now. Does he have that potential? Maybe. But also, like, he's still, what, 23, 24? Like, he's still young,
Yeah.
considering for a goaltender, and he can work. But then because you then have already overplayed Anthony Stolarz, he's hurt because you're riding Anthony Stolarz like a starter, which, like, you can look at his injury history and you can look at the most success that the Leafs had last season with Anthony Stolarz
Mm.
and Joseph Wool, and you're like, oh, they work better as a 50-50 tandem. Like, the stats are there. And you're not also paying either of them to be your starters. You're paying them to run them like a 50-50 tandem.
Yeah.
If you look at their contracts. So you then run yourself into that issue. Anthony Stolarz is probably playing hurt through a couple of games at least. You
Mm.
you get Wool back. Anthony Stolarz is hurt. Anthony Stolarz takes, nearly 3 months to come back. You have Joseph Wool and you have Dennis Hildeby, and it works. It's great. Okay. They're both, like, there for a while. Top 10. I think both of them
Mm.
are still probably top 15 in the league in save percentage
Yeah.
over the course of the season. It's great. But then you ride Joseph Wool too hard, and then he gets hurt. And then you're like, well, man, who could have done this? You! By not understanding what you have. And so
Yeah.
then, but also through this whole thing is you're having these goalies face 30 plus shots regularly because you don't have a defense. A, because you're missing Chris Tanev, but also the defense that you have just isn't working without Chris Tanev.
No.
Yes, he's a huge part of that decor and he's a huge part of that blue line, and losing him is not great. But, like, you can't for a while, their biggest stretch, for a stretch, there was a big stretch of the season so far where their best defensemen are coming from OEL, which, not against Oliver Ekman-Larsson, he's an Olympian, but OEL, and Troy Stecher, a guy you claimed off waivers.
Which doesn't look brilliant.
It's like, if you're like, man, look at the steal we got from Troy Stecher claiming off waivers. Yeah, great, but, like, also, why is he suddenly now for a stretch was one of your best defensemen? I think that says more about the quality of the blue line that you had before than it does of, like, hey, what a fine Troy Stecher was. Like, wow, look at us, what a pick up. Like, let's all pat ourselves on the back. We've done something. No, you haven't. You haven't actually made any considerable changes to your lineup. And here's where I'm going to say it. You sell. I'm sorry. If you're, Brad Treliving, you maybe have probably one of the easiest jobs in the league as a GM. You're right up there with Jim Rutherford in terms of you just start selling. Because it's the easiest thing to do as a GM. Yes, you want to get fair return for what you're selling off, but you do want to sell. And it's not that hard to do. You just say, hey, we're open to getting, like, there's going to be things that you're going to say, hey, we will not consider, Austin Matthews being one, William Nylander, Scott Lawton for culture reasons alone, because he is one of the few guys on that lineup right now who understands and gets it. And I'm going to be totally honest, because I'm not one to call out locker room culture and, like, put my nose into things that I don't really know and understand because I'm not in that room. But you hear the way he talks to the media, especially after wins, after losses. He gets it. He knows what
Yeah.
it means to wear the crest. That logo means something to him, and it means something, and you don't see it in the way that other guys talk about this team. It's like, we're losing and no one's mad about it. It's like, you should be mad that you're losing and frustrated, and I get it. You don't, you maybe are a little bit more reserved about your emotions to the media, but like, no one has said, hey, I'm mad we're losing, except for Scott Lawton.
Which, a little bit concerning.
A little bit concerning. So you hold on to him because you need to have someone in that locker room who gets it. You're not going to sell off Matthew Nice because this team needs to get younger, and so he's one of your only guys under the age of 25.
Yeah.
So that means you're holding on to Easton Cowan as well. Now people are going to be like, oh, why would you? Because you're not selling that off. I'm sorry. Have anyone tuned in to the Boston Bruins recently and has watched what Fraser Minton has done in the past 6 months?
Done.
Like,
why did we get rid of him?
Why did you get rid of him? Sorry, your whole biggest issue that you've been like, how are we going to solve this problem for years was we don't have a third line center. Suddenly, you then get what is going to be your third line center. Just unfortunately, he's 20 years old. That's something you wait out. You wait on it. You have the smidge of patience to be like, he's like right on the cusp. Maybe we wait. And if it really, if he stagnates a little bit, we're still probably going to get the same. If we want to trade him somewhere, we're going to get something back. But also, he may become a superstar, and he's playing like,
he's doing so well.
He's doing so well in Boston. I saw a stat recently, and maybe it's changed a little bit, but I think he's scored now 15 goals or something like that, or 12 goals or something on the season. Somewhere in that range. It would put him 5th on the Leafs.
What have we done?
5th. 5th in the Leafs in goal scoring would be Fraser Minton right now. And you've traded him to Boston. You've traded him inside the division. I don't care if you go, but we needed defense, so we got Brandon Carr. Because you also, at the same time, gave up a first. If the Leafs end up, like, that first round pick, yes, is top 5 protected. Okay, so what happens when the lottery rolls around and the Toronto Maple Leafs pick ends up 6th or 7th? God forbid. Because you want to like look at these draft rankings. Do we want to be there and be like, oh, what sort of player are you getting at 6 or 7 in these? Because I can. We'll go there. Here we go. This is from The Athletic just put one out, a new ranking. For, you're looking at Carson Krells, who was at World Juniors, Caleb Maholtra, who plays for Brantford, Albert Smits, who was at World Juniors, Latvian defenseman, 6'3", 205. Like,
why?
Tyan Lawrence from BU could go at 5. Like, just because at the end of the day, yes, people are going to argue, but that team last year had the potential. You just had to make the right additions. And it's always a gamble you play in the NHL. But like, did you have to? Because the thing that we've talked about all the time is, man, the Leafs have never held on to their first round picks. They don't make a lot of first round selections. And even when they do, they end up late. And it's like, I'm not saying you hold on to your first round pick just in case you end up, winning the lot or whatever. Like, you end up with a higher pick, or you don't do well, you don't make the playoffs, and then you have, a lottery pick or something. But like, you're telling me the next Leafs pick, like first round pick that the Leafs own, is in 2028.
Oh my.
How are you then supposed to rebuild this team if you're without that first round pick for another 2 seasons? That's gonna be like, if you're like, oh, because the Leafs, are still in a position because they have good strong pieces, they have good goaltending, they have superstars that you can sort of build a lineup around like your good goaltending, your superstars, your top end forwards, and then the culture that you get from Scott Laughton. Now, I'm not saying Scott Laughton's the only guy responsible for a locker room culture, but you can build it around him and what he brings to the table. And you turn out to have a really good team, because look at Boston. Because you're going to get stuck in this endless loop of, you're going to get stuck in this endless loop like the Ottawa Senators did for years. We're like, oh, we're just a piece away. And then they run into mistakes like Alex DeBrincat, Jacob Chikrin, Vladimir Tarasenko. And now look at yourself, and you're just now crawling back into the playoff picture for a year. And now look at where they are in the standings. Now, mind you, they can't even buy a save right now. It's dreadful. The goaltending in Ottawa is terrible, to the fact that, like, I was shocked when it was the Montreal Canadiens who fired their goalie coach this morning and not the Ottawa Senators. But like, at the end of the day, then it comes down to the question of, like, who do you like? There is value in this lineup, and there are going to be some uncomfortable names that you're going to be like, hey, this is something you have to sort of look at. One of those is Morgan Rielly. I hate to say it, I love Mo. He's been a part of this team for a long time, but I think also you want to try and, not, like, you need to get something.
You can't keep building the defense around him when
the defense from him is not there.
Yeah.
Right?
And also, like, it's frustrating because it's such an incredible waste of brilliant goaltending.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Like, we're watching these guys. They're so good. And the potential is there to be great. But you can't be a great team if you rely on your goaltending and everyone else just goes to shit.
Exactly. Like, you can't build a team around, like, if your team is still getting shelled, like, your goalies are still getting shelled out 30 plus shots every night, and then you wonder why there's a regression that's happening, just past halfway through the season on your goaltenders, it's because they're tired. Have we not learned anything from, like, what happened for years before with the Leafs, where they would play their starting goaltender, play him 60, 65 games a year, and then, we get to the playoffs, and now suddenly we can't seem to get a save in the playoffs? What's going on? It's because you ran poor Freddie Anderson to the goddamn ground. And look, like, and not to say that you're doing the same thing necessarily, it's a slightly different situation, but still, the defense has to be there. And unfortunately, the defense isn't there. And then you have to start asking the question of, where else do you look to make changes? Is it coaching?
Mm-hmm.
Is it your GM? Because it's not working there. Like, where do you have to look? Because you have to stop forcing that you have belief in this team to turn around, because you're running out of runway. And it's unfortunate. This is stats that I got. So here we go. I'm just going to say this quote because I wanted to kind of slightly pivot the conversation. Craig Berube last night on what he learned about his team during this homestand. This is via Anna Dua. We got to keep the puck out of our net. That's what I've learned. Well, you don't say, Craig. You don't say.
No shit. Like,
wow.
Whoa, really?
Who would have thought?
I'm so glad he's there to tell us that, because I would never have guessed.
And so then this is through the replies. I'm, like, deep in the weeds here. This is through the replies of friend of the show, Arya, who has been on the show before, like, a year ago. And she replied to this quote, and then someone was in her replies. This is @2loved on Twitter, who like kind of have compiled some stats. One of them is like, Leafs have seen most shots 30 plus a night. They've seen 1,685 shots total so far. Best 10 teams in the league have seen 1,408 shots and less. Like, no wonder you're seeing massive regressions from your goaltenders in performance. You're missing a huge puck eater like Chris Tanev. The D is tired because they can't defend, and so then you get these things that have happened all season long where and you can see the goal coming from a mile away. Is that it's like when it's at the end of a shift and then the Leafs find themselves getting hemmed in their own zone, and so then they can't get a change. Like, do you see the exact situation that I'm talking about where you can see the goal coming because then they can't get the puck cleared, so they can't get the change. And so then if they do get the puck cleared, even if it's right at the start of a shift, like then right, like they get hemmed in right at the start of a shift. By the time they get the puck cleared, even if they do, they're too tired to do anything with it. So then they just have to dump it, go for the change, and the opposing team does the whole thing all over again. And you're in this never-ending cycle of not actually being able to move the puck up the ice. I'm not saying you have to go full, Vancouver Canucks and go a full rebuild. What I'm saying is you sell the assets that you have, which at this point are only roster players, and you recuperate prospects and draft picks. Because I'm sure there is someone out there who will pay a first-round pick for someone on the Leafs roster.
Yeah.
Especially if you're one of the first teams selling and you set the market price. If you go, hey, we will trade Nick Robertson. Hate to throw Nick Robertson out as a name out there because he is a young fast forward. But like you've been trying to make him work for a while, and if it just doesn't fit and you can get value from him, it's got to be like the hard-hitting, truth at this point. If someone's like, hey, first round, like, go for it.
Yeah.
Get something back. Get
something back because you're not getting Fraser Minton back.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure that the Edmonton Oilers would pay a pretty price tag for a guy like Bobby McMahon. I know you're mad at me for throwing his name out there.
That back.
I know you're mad at me, and this is me like removing emotional detachment of like the fact that I do like Bobby McMahon, but you do have like if you think about it this way, you could get a something pretty good for him because he's like his cap hit is low, but his scoring is high. He's fast, he's physical, and you could throw him up on a line up there with, match him up there with Connor McDavid, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, because he can play on that first line with Matthews, and he's shown that. Maybe even Leon Draisaitl, whatever, like, because he's got the speed to keep up. He's a pending UFA as well. So, like, you could, and maybe we get this perfect, everything works out in my world. I'm an armchair GM type deal where you trade Bobby McMahon to the Edmonton Oilers. He plays a half season for his like childhood favorite team, close to home, and then he re-signs back with the Leafs in September, and you get to have your cake and eat it too. But yeah, it's you have to start thinking like if I'm Brad and if Brad Treliving is not making phone calls right now to other teams to seeing what deals can get done, he's not doing his job right. At the end of the day, that's what it has to be.
Yeah.
Just because, like, you have nothing and the team's not good, and you have to at least have something and have a bad team, or have nothing and have a really good team. Or in a perfect world, have a lot and have a good team. But unfortunately, that's a hard thing to have.
Yes.
I mean,
I'm still mad at you.
I know you're still mad at me for throwing out Bobby McMahon. I feel like that was a big, little, but there has to be a
Our
shakeup.
Blorbo of the year.
I know he's our Blorbo of
And
the
you
year.
throw him under the bus like that.
I'm not. I'm throwing him out there because he's playing really well, so I know he would get he could actually go for quite a bit potentially, or you could just get like I don't know, an Isaac Howard, or I don't know, Sam O'Reilly. No, Sam O'Reilly. No, Isaac Howard, or like Matt Savoy or something like that from Edmonton. Although I do know they have a lot of first round picks because I've looked at their like list of picks and I was like, how have you managed this?
Mm.
Um,
They should give some to us.
yeah, they should.
Sharing is caring.
Yeah, so the Leafs do definitely need a shakeup. I mean, they are going on the road now. They have their West Coast road trip. That starts in Seattle tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern. So then they have the Canucks, Flames, Oilers, and then the Olympic break begins. So the Olympics are coming right up and fast around the corner there for sure. I mean, yeah, Leafs need a shakeup. Just like how there was an earthquake in like Southern Ontario last night. Leafs need there needs to be a change there. In some other news as well, because we haven't really talked about the women's side of things in a little while. This is via hockey news. Each member of Team USA will receive $200,000 for their Olympic appearance via a donor. This donor is Ross Stevens, the founder and CEO of Stone Ridge Holdings Group. So that is huge, obviously, for the members of that team, because USA, I think, has a little bit more. I'm trying to remember if USA has a little bit more money out there that they get from the government for going to the Olympics than Canada does. But they're like, if you're an Olympic athlete, it's real. Like most athletes are working a job or two jobs to be able to continue training. So, and rely heavily on grants and things like that to support their training and everything, and sponsors and stuff like that. So it is really cool to see that the women's team will receive that money from a donor for that. I mean, I think also as well, I don't know if you've seen this, no, to like totally change angles, talking about women's hockey. Britta Curl, who is a forward with who's a forward with the Minnesota Frost, has signed with I want to just make sure I get this right. Sorry. Here we go. Has appeared in a promotional video to apparently she's now working with a company or an agency, I believe it is, called Fierce Athlete. The company, this is via Robert Fisher on Twitter. The company bills itself as an empowering female athletes to thrive in their God-given identity and femininity, close quote. One goal is to, quote, mentor and disciple athletes, end quote. What the? Sorry, I didn't read that in like the tweet preview that I saw. That's crazy. I'm sorry. And it sucks because there was a story written by oh my god, what's her last name? Haley is her first name, and I'm like blanking on her first name. And now I'm blanking, but she did this interview where it was like, I've changed and I've grown and I'm not the same person I was when I liked those hate tweets about being transphobic.
Me.
And then it's like, then she goes and signs with like an openly like transphobic like company that is like
and she can't even be like, oh, I didn't know, because one look at their Instagram feed
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, like if you do even like if it's like, oh, maybe like no, no. Like you look through it and there's no plausible deniability anywhere.
Like it is very like
Turfy,
it's so turfy.
right? And it's like one of the and it's unfortunate because like the PWHL like still doesn't have like a gender and inclusion policy.
Which is
And it's one of those things where it's like I think there's been so much discourse about LGBTQ identities in hockey in the past couple of in the past few weeks, I should say, with the release of Heated Rivalry and its extreme rise in popularity. And oh my God, every so often I get a tweet from that from like the Heated. Well, because like I am interested in Heated. Loved the show. You know, we loved the show. We loved it as a show, that's for sure. But then you get like sort of you see like a tweet from someone and you're like, are you guys insane? Like, are you guys okay?
mm,
And like the way that people have now switched to talking about the show is really interesting in the way of like the fact of it's become such a weird conversation topic to talk about because people don't realize that while the TV show is great as a TV show, it maybe doesn't necessarily um you know reflect
how things are.
yeah uh in reality. And I think we saw that with, oh my God, now I'm blanking on his first name. Is it Zach Sullivan?
Yeah, Zach Sullivan.
I'm so good. I knew the last name was
My
Sullivan.
girl.
I was blanking on his first name.
My close personal friend.
Zach Sullivan, who we have talked on this show about before, but
Mm.
um he talked a little bit about Heated Rivalry. And like if you read, because people only were reading the quote that was in the headline. If you read the full quote, I believe he does, like read the full article and everything. He does be like, oh, well, it's a good show, great representation. It doesn't properly like, expand on the entire process and what it's actually like to like be a closeted athlete, especially in a sport like hockey. And I think,
Mm.
there does need to be a little bit of recognition of that because then people like went on to be like hate on him for being like, so like this is what it was like for me, which is not how
Mm.
it was portrayed in this fictional TV show that was created for entertainment.
Yeah, and it's like
And there's
as
nothing
someone
wrong
who
with that. And it's not like I'm now hating on Heated Rivalry. No, people just have to understand that while fictional shows are great, it also is not up to media to shape our culture because
mm,
our culture or like sorry our shape our culture is what shapes our media. And so like
yeah.
if you want to see actual lasting change in society and that the way society goes about discussing things, you have to go at it from an organizational or like a governmental level and not a media level of like, oh, but it's the job of the media, like we need representation in media, blah 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 blah. It's like yes we do, but also like there's a lot bigger issues at hand than seeing two boys kiss on your TV screen. And it's a lot and not to be like woe is me, like people are dying, like children are starving in Africa type deal, but like I think there needs to be more change coming from the governmental and organizational level
Mm,
than there needs to be right now of like we need more TV shows like Heated Rivalry.
And also like as someone who has been a Zach Sullivan fan for quite some time now, um, it's like, and it also as someone who is familiar with like the UK hockey and like the EIHL. I always want to say EHIL. It sounds better, but it's just wrong. It's like the way that he put it was he just summed it up perfectly, and it's the way that he said like Heated Rivalry, brilliant show, amazing. We all loved it, but also sort of it doesn't dismiss how like the trauma and the isolation of it, but it doesn't of like being a closeted professional athlete, but it doesn't like I don't know how to word it, but it doesn't make it the forefront of
No. Which, like, it's a
the show,
six
which is
episode.
fine.
See, there was 6 episodes,
Yeah, it's like
right?
it's fine. It's not an issue, but also you can't then go and say it's like the most accurate like portrayal of being a closeted professional athlete because it's like for some it might be, but also for others it won't be. And I think people have to understand that while it is a depiction of, how it can be to be a closeted athlete, it's not the depiction. It's not like the only way that you can experience it, and people forget that. And also, I don't like seeing people get mad at Zach Sullivan.
Yeah,
He's really lovely.
he seems really lovely. And maybe once this all calms down over the summer, we'll send him a DM or an
Yeah.
email or
I'd
something.
be like, hey, remember when I was at Skit with the Storm? Remember when I remember when we had a chit chat? Well,
um, but yeah, like, and I think also as well, people are not normal about heated rivalry and like a weird, like,
mm.
not even just the show, but like the actors and like
Oh,
everything
people are so
about it.
weird about
And
it.
I was like, and it's like you see stuff and you're like, oh, I don't think society was ready for this show to be as widespread as it was. Like, it was supposed to be like a Canadian version of Scam,
Mm.
you know, the Swedish
Oh
like
yeah,
teen drama that people were watching off of Google Drives.
Google Drive.
Which I never did. I wasn't really on that side of Tumblr when it was really popular, so I never was really watching it off of Google Drives and stuff. But like, I do think that like it really was made for and was for this to be this niche Canadian show that existed in like the Canadian culture zeitgeist, but m- like a lot of Canadian TV shows never really broke into that American audience because 90% of the American audience was not ready for a show like that and also
No.
is not used to watching a show like that. Not to mean that every show that comes out of Canada is a smutty hockey gay romance, because it's not. But I think if you watch a lot of Canadian television, you can tell Heated Rivalry is a Canadian TV show compared to American shows, you know, of the same time period, a sort of
Yeah.
deal. But all this to say, man, Britta Curl hasn't changed.
No.
I don't know if we should be. I'm not surprised that she's now been like partnering with this company that's hoping that's so turfy. It's not even funny. That's very transphobic. Um, and I don't want to. It just like uses weird. Like if you read any of the quotes from it and you like scroll through it, you're like, this is a very weird
So
religious and nothing against
strange.
like religion in a way, but because like you can be religious and not be a turf.
Mm,
But it was like it uses that sort of language in a very weird, strange way.
I think it's a very good. It's not very good. I shouldn't have paused when I did. It's a very good sort of example of how completely fucked American Christianity is and how just wildly like in its own bubble it is, where it's like it's the language that's used where I'm just like, wow. Like when I was like reading through it and like having a look, I just sort of went, this is very like American
Yeah.
in just the vibe of it. And I was like, that, yeah, it's a can of worms we're not going to open here, but it's a can of worms that does need to be opened at some point by someone.
Yeah. And I do think it's a very interesting vein of topic of conversation to go about. And it's like also a thing too where it's like, man, and I get it, like, you know, being like everyone in women's hockey is gay, but like also like, girl, you play women's,
Yeah.
right? It's one of those things where you're like, wow, I don't know how I could feel if I was on that team and like if I was on that team and like knowing that my teammates, you know, openly transphobic and possibly also homophobic, and I'm sitting there
Mm-hmm.
as a queer player being like,
Yeah.
so you hate me. Why should I pass the puck to you?
Mm.
Sort of
And also
deal.
it's very interesting that, you know, when the initial uproar about her being wildly transphobic was happening, she was like, no, 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 guys, that's not me. I've changed. I'm different now. But it's very interesting that she's then gone and done this now. Whereas, like, it's almost worse than if she'd, like, posted the video 18 months ago. It's like you've
Yeah.
picked this time to be like, no, I agree with the values of this company
And it's also
so
as
much
well
I'm gonna
as,
promote it.
especially after like that article that got written where she's like, I'm a better person now, guys. I promise I learned from
It's
my
so
mistakes and I'm sorry. And it's like, no, you didn't.
it's like, okay.
Okay. Yeah, literally. Okay.
Like you can say you've changed, but I wanna see proof.
Yeah.
I wanna
Uh,
see actions. I wanna see more than words.
and because this is 28. Um, I guess also in other news, this is just like as we've been recording via Elliot Friedman. Here we go. Find it again. Let it load. Artemi
Yes.
Panarin is not playing for the New York Rangers tonight versus the New York Islanders for roster reasons. Is not expected to play before the Olympic freeze, assuming nothing occurs before then. So Artemi Panarin, who it's been, you know, now, you know, put publicly out there that the New York Rangers will not be negotiating a contract with him and will be working with him to find him a place for him to get traded to at some point throughout the course of the season, I guess before March 6th now at this point, before the deadline.
Mm.
So obviously then, yeah, it just he is no longer now going to play between now and you know that which I guess is March 4th, not March 4th, February 4th. He will now no longer play between now and the Olympic break. So
I did
uh
wonder why you'd pulled a ooh face. I was like,
yeah,
oh, goodness
that
gracious
is
me.
why. So we will see
I was
where
like,
he ends
what's she
up.
gonna drop on me now?
I mean, I think definitely, you know, it'll be interesting to see because he will be getting traded. It's not like, oh, a will he won't be. No, he will be getting traded. So it'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see where he ends up, because it
Mm.
definitely, you know, he will have a say in where he goes. Um, so it'll be something interesting to watch.
Hmm.
I like don't even know. Oh, actually, no, I do know because it was a Saturday headline last week, I guess last weekend. Elliot Friedman said that the package for him will look similar to what it did for a Brock Nelson when he was traded from the Islanders to Colorado. And for just reference of what that package was, he was traded to Colorado for Callum Ritchie, who was an A-plus prospect, Oliver Killington, and a conditional first-round pick in the 2026 draft, which was a first-round pick, and a third-round pick in the 2027 draft. So, sort of to give you an idea on, you know, potentially what that package could look like for Panarin. Um, with that being said, I don't know if you have anything else to talk about. I mean, we're going into the Olympics, so news is been kind of dying down unless there's like a, I don't know, a big
Mm.
sort of.
Yeah, I don't think I have. I feel like I had something to say and it's just gone. It might come back to me, it might not. But yeah,
Yeah.
I got nothing. The thought has run away.
All right then. Well, I think we've ranted quite a fair amount about the Leafs,
Mm.
about how they've played. Obviously, we will have. I'm now like trying to like look back on my camera. We will have one more show next Monday, and then another show on Thursday next week, and then it'll be the Olympics. Unsure. We probably won't be. We probably will go maybe once a week.
Mm.
Because literally, there is a roster freeze. No one's playing games except for like during the Olympics. So we might do like, I don't know, Olympic episodes. Um, or we might just take the weeks off because like we'll see. But we definitely have 2 more episodes coming to you before the Olympics. Monday next week and also Thursday. Thursday is really exciting. We will have our sister show, the Coast on. We'll have Casey and Catherine on with us, and it'll be really fun and exciting.
I'm so
I'm
excited.
I'm really looking forward to it. I have a fun
I
little
can't
game
wait.
planned that hopefully
Oh
we can get
God.
to. No, it'll be
Oh,
fun, I promise.
I'm still scared.
I definitely have told you what it is too. Maybe I have. No, okay, I'll tell you after what it is.
Okay.
But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back on Monday with another episode. In the meantime, you can find the show, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow the show on Twitter at From the Fourth Line. That's fourth with the number 4TH. If you think the two of us are absolutely hilarious, or you just want to see what we're up to, or yelling about the Toronto Maple Leafs, you can follow us on Twitter. Um, at 60 Leafs for Ella, at Parapi1 for myself. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll be back on Monday. And in the meantime, go
Leafs
Leafs,
go.
go.